Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today, I am finally going to be talking about the results of the 2022 midterm elections held on November 8th. I know it's November 14th now. I've been waiting for those results to trickle in and then do a final analysis. We do have pretty much all of the calls made. Obviously, Alaska and Georgia will be runoffs. Kelly Shabaka and Lisa Murkowski will face off in their runoff. Or, yes, kind of a runoff. It's also ranked choice voting, so that is done differently in Alaska, but either way, a Republican will be victorious in that race. Probably Lisa Murkowski at this point, because Shabaka, I doubt, will get any more than 45, 46% of the vote going forward. Murkowski will probably get most of the Democrats' vote at this point. Georgia, however, is going to a runoff, but that's besides the point of taking a look at the election map and just seeing what happened in this race. The Democrats wildly exceeded expectations, and Republicans wildly underperformed in pretty much every single area of the country. Now, there are some, glimmers of hope for the Republicans. There are some good signs for them. And mainly, those states are New York, with Chuck Schumer and Kathy Hochul, where Lee Zeldin ran, a very strong New York governor candidate with a very good message. Florida, of course, with Marco Rubio and Ron DeSantis. Republicans performed exceptionally well in Florida, exceptionally well. And they really emphasized what the red wave would have been in Florida across the country had it gone the way that many people expected it to go. And then Texas. While there wasn't a Senate election, there was a gubernatorial election, and Republicans' Greg Abbott wildly overperformed in that race as well. But when we look now across the entire country, we can see that the Democrats were able to retain the Senate, flipping Pennsylvania. We don't know how Georgia will end up, but they could end up gaining one seat in the Senate at the end of the election. Likely, probably Raphael Warnock will win his runoff. That's a likely outcome. Now, we'll obviously have to wait for polls, although the polls were not reliable as well in this election. They overestimated Republicans, but they could very well end up with 51 Democrat senators to Republicans' 49. Now, just taking a quick look at the House, Republicans at this point will most likely get an incredibly, very, very small majority in the House of Representatives. I'm actually going to go to YouTube for a second because I want to pull up something I put on my polls. I'm going to come back to that, but taking a look at the House of Representatives, Republicans will probably end up anywhere from 219, 18 seats to 222, 23 seats. So an incredibly small majority, pretty much what the Democrats have now in the House of Representatives. They, in my mind, will likely take the House, however, with significantly less seats than I expected and that many others expected them to take, including the RCP map, which I'm going to pull up as well. Let's just pull up the Senate map, although I'll go right over to the House. When you look at the RCP House map, Republicans were already guaranteed to take 227 seats, and that was in the lean category. They're not even going to get 227 seats. When you go through the toss-ups, you include the toss-ups, let's just say, for the sake of things, split the toss-ups in half. The Republicans get, 17 toss-up races, add 17 to 227. You're in the high 230s, I'm pretty sure, if I do my math correctly, or 234, actually, so mid-230s. So Republicans, definitely did not do as well in the House either. I don't know why the New York Times hasn't called New York 22, although that race has been called by pretty much most of the sources across the country, so that'll get them to 213. When you look in Colorado with Lauren Boebert, she's going to narrowly win that race, although that is an incredibly narrow victory for her and something that she should be worried about going forward. She'll win that, getting them to 214. They're going to probably lose that other race in Colorado. Heading over to California, David Valadao, the most left-leaning Republican probably left in the House of Representatives at this point, will win there. That'll get them to 215 seats in the House of Representatives. Mike Garcia will probably win in the 27th district. That'll get them to 216 seats. Going up, this is going to be an incredibly close race. That's really up in the air at this point. Continuing to look through the uncalled House races, Kevin Kiley could very well win in District 33. That'll get them to 207 seats. A very close election here. Undecided. And then up in Maine 2nd District, also a very close race. We don't know how that will end up either. So at this point in time, Republicans do lead in a lot of races. Actually, I left this out as well. Sorry, Michelle Steele will get them to 218 seats, including the majority. This will get them the majority. Going here, I did say Kevin Calvert, I believe, will get them to 219. And that'll get them the majority. So what you have here is you have Brandon Williams in New York, 213, Lauren Boebert in Colorado, 214, Kelvin Calvert in California, 215. Where am I? Michelle Steele in 45, 217. Going up, David Valadao, 218. That's the majority. Garcia, 219. And then possibly getting maybe one or two of these as well, 220, 221. That's what the final count's looking like. So they'll get a narrow majority. Kevin McCarthy may be Speaker. He may not be Speaker because there is going to be a competition for control of the Republican Party in the majority once I presume that they will get it. However, this was a red trickle. This was not a red wave. Going back to the Senate, let's just compare this to my Senate election prediction because my Senate election prediction was off. I'm not going to lie about that. It was a bad. Well, I don't even want to say it was a bad prediction. It was the prediction that most people were making at this point. 53-47 Senate. I did my poll on YouTube before, obviously, all the results started coming in. This was not 44%. Many people expected it to be 240 to 249, 230 to 239. These were about 10% each. This was about 10% as well. Most of the results were here. Obviously, as the night coming in, this poll changed. But just look at the poll that I made. How many seats will the Republicans get in the House? It was definite that they were going to get the majority. And the poll was just basically, how many seats are they going to get? So is it going to be 220, 229 on the low end, 260 plus on the high end? And most people thought they'd get in the 240s, which it seemed as if the momentum had them getting that. And I had my Senate poll. I didn't even have a 51-49 Democrat majority in the Senate. The best case scenario for the Democrats was a 50-50 Senate at that point. And of course, as the night started to come in, many people changed their vote to the 50-50 Senate. But at the beginning, it heavily swayed in 53-47, 52-48 Republican majority. So that poll changed as well. And then, of course, all of this stuff, there was Tudor Dixon. People believed that she would win. Adam Laxalt, that poll stands strong. 83%. Herschel Walker, Mehmet Oz, 77%. Blake Masters, 68%. So, the majority of people going into this election had kind of the prediction that I had, where it was 53-47 Republican majority. Maggie Hassan would narrowly win in New Hampshire. I had that as a tilt. She ended up winning by about 9 to 10 points. On here, she won by 10, but final results was about 9. Pennsylvania was tilt in Mehmet Oz's favor. John Fetterman then ended up winning that state by 4 points in the general. Georgia was, I thought that would be close. I thought it would be tilt. It ended up tilt in pretty much Warnock's favor. Arizona, it's going to look like Mark Kelly's probably going to win by about 2 to 3 points. Nevada, Catherine Cortez Master narrowly won. So it ended up being, at this point in time, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, with Georgia as a toss-up, and that's what the Senate looks like at the moment. My prediction was Republicans would get Georgia, they would get Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Nevada. Mehmet Oz was a bad candidate. Everybody understood that. He had terrible messaging. He ran a really bad campaign. I made a YouTube video going a few weeks back. You can look at it. It's up in my channel, discussing how Mehmet Oz ran and was running a very bad campaign, and he needed to change things if he wanted to win. The debate hurt Fetterman. Luckily for him, it happened only not 5 days, but maybe 2 weeks before the election. A lot of early mail-in ballots had already been sent in. Fetterman was able to, kind of help himself and save himself in that ability. So anyway, my governor prediction, my Senate prediction was off. I did believe Blake Masters would win in Arizona. That was to be honest with you, that was a very big shock. I know he didn't get as much funding, but Nevada and Arizona definitely were more shocking to me than Pennsylvania, just for the most part. To be honest, they did take the longest amount of time to come in. I frankly agree with a lot of Republicans, honestly, that were saying this should not happen where the vote takes, it's not even fully in Arizona. It's 93% in, where the vote takes days upon days upon days to be counted. In previous elections, in almost all previous U.S. elections in modern history, the vote was counted immediately. The vote was counted and the vote was in, and either in the late night or the early morning of the next day, 2, 3 in the morning, you knew who the winner of the election was. We still don't know who's going to win the Arizona governor race. This Arizona Senate race has taken a very, very long time to count. Maricopa County, obviously, a lot of people were talking about what was going on there. A lot of people were upset with what was going on there. I think the voting system does have to change. I don't think that I think that states should be required to report the vote in a specific amount of time. Otherwise, they have to rerun the election. If they can't report the vote, honestly, this would be something that I would support. If they cannot report how many votes, what the final vote count is, at least at the most of 48 hours after the election, after the polls have closed in Nevada. Polls close at 10 p.m. Eastern time in Nevada, I believe. After 10 p.m., 48 hours from that time, if they cannot count every single vote by that time, you need to completely redo the entire election and have a runoff or something later on in a few months or few weeks. Same thing with obviously all the other states. That would be something that I would support. Going over to the governor races, I want to talk about the governor races. Actually, I'm just going to put it on my governor prediction here. Okay, actually did not want the live election results. Meant for this. This was my final governor prediction. 30 Republican seats to 20 Democrat governorships. Now let's take a look at what actually happened. Tony Evers won in Wisconsin. Oregon did not flip as many people hoped it would. Drazen won, or Drazen lost. Kotek ended up winning, the Democrat, although, the independent did get a small percent of the vote. Not as much as many of the other polls predicted they'd get it in double digits, but that did not happen. Kansas, Democrat won, of course. Laura Kelly, who was the incumbent, she narrowly won in Kansas. And obviously that was not all. And I'm forgetting somebody. Maybe this is accurate, actually, at the moment. Let's see. Carrie Lake has not been decided, but Joe Lombardo did win in Nevada. That was one of the high moments of the for the Republicans, at least in the Southwest. So I think it's a 27-23. I may be wrong with this. There could be a state that I missed. Obviously, Georgia was big for the Republicans. We'll say Carrie Lake. We'll just put Arizona as red, but we know that that's toss up. That's undecided. Very well could go to Katie Hobbs at this point. Nevada to Joe Lombardo. Actually, I do believe the Democrat did this. This is not accurate, is it? No, the Republican won in Alaska. But either way, Republicans underperformed massively across the country in most governor races, aside from the big races where the red wave did hit, such as in New York. No, the Republican didn't win, but the red wave hit. In Georgia, Stacey Abrams got blown out. Florida, Ron DeSantis destroyed Charlie Crist, the former governor, and Greg Abbott destroyed Beto O'Rourke. In Texas, take a look at Florida. Florida is where the biggest red wave happened, and that's why so many people are saying DeSantis 2024. For me, I would say don't speak too soon. Don't blame Trump fully for these election results. Don't, Republicans are going to have to look back and really understand what happened in this election, because this is very unexpected. But in Florida, Marco Rubio won by about 16 points, and Ron DeSantis won by, let's just round that up and say he won by 20 points against Charlie Crist. He won by about 1.5 million votes. That is pretty much unprecedented for a Republican governor of Florida. I don't even think Jeb Bush performed that well. So massive, massive victory for the Republicans in Florida. Going over to New York, the New York governor race. Now, Andrew Cuomo previously won New York by over 20 points back when he ran in 2018, I believe. Going over here, Kathy Hochul wins narrowly, very, very narrowly for the New York governor race, about 6-point victory with 95% of the vote. And so 5.8-point victory in New York, which is something pretty much unprecedented for a Democrat. New York has been a Democrat stronghold for decades at this point. Lee Zeldin chipping away at that. He talked about crime. He talked about immigration. and he really touched the hearts of a lot of people in New York, something that, many people were like, it's a bit of a stretch for him to possibly win that race, but it's going to be close nonetheless, and that's something that people should be worried about, at least the Democrats. Chuck Schumer previously won by like 40 points in New York, only won by 13 points this election. Take a look at New York. He wins by 13.3 points this election. Go back to his last election, 2016. He wins by 43 points. 2010 by 32 points. So he massively underperforms in the New York Senate. So there is some silver lining for the Republicans in New York and in Florida and in Georgia. Going over to Georgia, you can see Brian Kemp. I believe he won by about 7 points against Stacey Abrams. Many people said that Stacey Abrams should run for president. She did very well, in mobilizing the vote in Georgia. This election, she completely got blown out for Georgia, which is considered at this point a tilt Democrat state. Let's see, Brian Kemp won by about over 7 points. So 7.6 points at this point, 7.6 points at this point. Sounds weird, but completely demolished Stacey Abrams. He wasn't really able to carry Herschel Walker over the edge, unfortunately, for the Republicans. It would have been nice for them to know that it is at least a 50-50 Senate, and Joe Manchin does have a bigger sway on the vote. Nonetheless, big win for the Republicans in the governor race in Georgia. And then finally going over to Texas, Beto O'Rourke, who gave Ted Cruz a run for his money in the 2018 Senate race, got blown out by Greg Abbott, lost by 11 points in Texas. That is due to a lot of Republicans moving out of California, moving to Texas, voting red. Even some Democrats moving out of California, voting red. A lot of Hispanics shifting to the right. Texas has become more of a Republican, not a stronghold, but it has solidified itself as a lean to likely Republican state at this point. Many people say, oh, Texas will flip blue. Texas is going to flip blue. I think that it's kind of the shift in Texas from the right to the left has pretty much stopped at this point. It's stopped. It's pretty much paused, and we don't know which direction it's going to start shifting after the pause ends. But I don't think that as the elections or as the years continue to pass by, it's going to slowly creep towards the left side. We've seen that been happening across since about 2010 earlier. Trump only won in 2016 by less than double digits. He won in 2020 by 5 points. We're seeing that pause here. Greg Abbott wins by 11. Let's actually look at the previous victory margin that he won by in Texas. So here he wins by 11. In 2018, he wins by 13.3. So a very, very small shift against Greg Abbott. And he was facing more prominent candidate, Beto O'Rourke, in this election anyway. But this all gets to talking about what happened in this election. This was a red ripple. I'm not going to say that Republicans did not do better than the Democrats in this election. They did win the popular vote. They are on track to win the popular vote. They're on track to take back the House of Representatives. They performed exceptionally well in Florida, in New York, in Georgia, in Texas. But overall, the Democrats stayed strong. The Democrats prevented the Republicans from doing what many people thought they would, sweeping the country. Republicans getting a 53 seat majority. People were saying they were going to get a 56 seat majority in the Senate. They would win Washington, which did not happen. They would win Colorado, which did not happen. And of course they would win. This was obvious. They'd win Nevada, they'd win Arizona, they'd win Pennsylvania, they'd win New Hampshire. Those were all givens. Washington, Colorado. So the Democrats prevented that from happening. They stopped that in its tracks. In the House of Representatives, they stopped the red wave in its tracks as well. Republicans were pretty much projected to get 230, 240 seats in the House. That didn't happen either. My House prediction was off. So the Democrats performed very, very well in what was expected to be a red sweep, a red wave year going into 2024. I don't know how this election is going to affect the 2024 election. Historically, red wave years or years like this have heavily favored the party in the minority. In this case, it favored them, but in no way as much as it has in previous years, completely underwhelming expectations. Going back to 2018, where it was supposed to be a blue wave year, the Democrats did take the House of Representatives. They gained a lot of seats. In total, they only did have about 232 seats in the House, so relatively a small majority. Republicans are going to have probably a 10-seat smaller majority, still a majority in the House nonetheless, but a relatively smaller majority. And in the Senate, Republicans did gain seats. If you go back and remember 2018, they did gain seats in the Senate, which possibly Democrats could gain one seat. But in 2018, Republicans did gain seats like North Dakota with Heidi Heitkamp. They gained Missouri with Claire McCaskill. So there were areas. They gained Florida with Rick Scott defeating Bill Nelson. So Republicans did perform somewhat better than expected in the 2018 midterms. So maybe this is a new historical precedent that is being set where the party in power actually somewhat gains in the Senate and narrowly loses the House. But nonetheless, this cannot overshadow the fact that this is a big disappointment for Republicans. They were expecting to perform much better. They were going to easily take back the Senate and on track to possibly get over 60 seats after 2024. That is pretty much out of the picture at this point. The Republicans were on track to win the House and have a significant majority there. They were ready to act. They were probably about to impeach Biden. They were going to impeach Kamala Harris. They were going to remove Eric Swalwell and AOC, Ayanna Pressley, and Ilhan Omar from their committees. I don't even know if they have the votes to do that anymore. Republicans were going to subpoena Fauci. They were going to reduce his salary to $0.00. I don't know if they have the votes to do that anymore. They have an incredibly, incredibly thin majority. They do not have much power at this point in the House. Kevin McCarthy really cannot get the Republicans, in my mind, to act in unison at this point because they are so scattered over the fact of this midterm trickle. They feel vulnerable at this point. Democrats definitely should pounce on that. They should act on that. Republicans should stay steadfast. They should continue to support their policies. I think they should continue to support Donald Trump. I don't think it's bad for them to back away from Trump or DeSantis. Those are the two strongest players in the Republican Party. Those are the people who perform the best in the Republican Party. For all of the problems that people say Donald Trump has, in general elections for a Republican candidate, he does exceptionally well compared to how Mitt Romney and John McCain did. Even in Wisconsin, where he lost it by less than a percent. In Pennsylvania, he lost by about a point and a half. So he does perform well, relatively. In Georgia, he narrowly lost. In Arizona, he narrowly lost. If he won, he lost Georgia by 0.3%. If he won in Georgia, he lost Arizona by 0.3%. If he won in Arizona, he lost Wisconsin by 0.7%. If he won there as well, he would still be the president of the United States. So take that easily. Don't say that Donald Trump is a bad candidate and he has a bad effect on Republicans. That's not necessarily true. And of course, Ron DeSantis saying that he has a negative effect is also ridiculous because of the fact of how much he has swayed Florida. So Republicans, I think, should continue to stay with their values. They should, be proud of the fact, or at least try and hype up the fact that they have took back the House. Set their goals to expanding their House majority in 2024. Of course, taking control of the Senate, taking back control of the Senate. This time it's going to be after 4 years instead of 2, which is what they were expecting. And of course, win the presidency in 2024. It's either going to be Trump or DeSantis as the nominee at this point, unless somebody comes out of nowhere, which could very well happen, but probably not. So that's what Republicans should set their eyes on. They should not be looking back at the midterms. They should set their eyes on the general election in 2 years. That's the most important thing that they need to be thinking about at this point. This election is in the past. It wasn't as they expected. They can learn, they can grow, and they need to set their eyes on 2024. That's really all that I have for you today. I know it was a very long video, but I felt that I had to say a lot, and then there was a lot to be said. A red trickle, as many people are calling it, a red ripple. Nowhere near a wave, nowhere near a tsunami, nowhere near a hurricane. It was a little ripple in the water. And that's what it was. So, yeah, that's all I have for you. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Really appreciate everybody who has watched my videos and continue to watch the videos. Thank you so much. Please like the video below. Comment your thoughts on this midterm election, one of the weirdest midterm elections I think we've ever seen in modern American history. And yeah, I guess that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and have a great day. See you all soon.